Hey everyone, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're building a complete step-by-step blueprint for a 2026 grade cryptocurrency transaction monitoring system. The regulatory landscape has just shifted so massively over the last few years, and honestly, those old piecemeal solutions, they just don't cut it anymore. So we're going to construct a production-ready architecture completely from the ground up. We really need to balance the raw, crazy speed of decentralized finance with the absolute uncompromising demands of global regulators.
Now we're starting off with this absolutely massive number, over $100 million. Why? Well, because regulatory violations of things like the Bank Secrecy Act or the EU's 6th AML directive, they are routinely triggering fines north of this amount. Seriously, your compliance architecture isn't just some annoying regulatory checkbox anymore. It's quite literally the financial shield for your entire operation. A single critical failure here, and well, it can literally mean the end of the business. So, here is our architectural roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the 2026 compliance mandate. Then, data ingestion and enrichment, followed by rules engines and ML. After that, we'll hit sanctions and the travel rule. And finally, wrap up with dashboards and case management. Let's get to it.
All right, starting with part 1, the 2026 compliance mandate.
So, what's the core problem here? Well, traditional fiat compliance was built for a completely different world. A world of verified identities, static bank accounts, very distinct national borders. But in 2026, our crypto compliance system has to analyze insanely complex multi-chain transaction data just to track illicit funds across a completely borderless pseudonymous network. You're no longer just looking at, oh, John Doe transferred $50. Nope. You are now tracking these deeply fragmented token movements across decentralized exchanges and complex cross-chain bridges. It's like a massive puzzle. And when you're facing mandates this complex, you inevitably hit that classic ultimate dilemma, right? Do you buy an off-the-shelf tool, or do you build a custom stack? Now, buying definitely gets you to market faster. You get ready-made workflows and all that. But it can really bottleneck your customization and leave you completely blind to the actual detection logic running under the hood. Building a custom architecture, on the other hand, gives you the absolute, total control you need to adapt to risk profiles and specific blockchains that are evolving practically overnight. For a true 2026 production-grade system, that tailored flexibility is an absolute must-have.
Moving right along to Section 2, Data Ingestion and Enrichment.
I want you to think of this technical layer like a giant filtration system. Chaotic, raw data just pours in at the top, and highly actionable intelligence drips out the bottom. This specific sequence, derived from TRM Labs, perfectly maps the life of a transaction flowing through our system. We start with data collection, literally aggregating all that raw ledger data and bridge records. Then we hit risk assessment, scoring those transactions against known bad actor wallets. Any high-risk moves trigger flagging, which pipes directly into reporting, think generating suspicious activity reports. Finally, KYC integration swoops in to map that shadowy pseudonymous wallet back to a real, verified identity for law enforcement. It's this beautifully seamless journey from raw on-chain noise to enforcement-grade proof. Now, to actually build this right, our data enrichment layer absolutely has to support two very distinct functions at the exact same time. Wallet screening is basically your bouncer, okay? It checks the point-in-time risk of a specific address before you even let them through the door, just giving a quick pass or fail. Transaction monitoring, though, that's your 24/7 security camera. It's continuously analyzing the flows, the amounts, and the behavioral patterns over time to catch the bad actors who've already snuck inside. You absolutely need both of these running to keep any exchange fully compliant.
Okay, on to Section 3, Rules Engines and ML.
So how do we actually score and filter all that enriched data without accidentally crashing the whole platform? Well, this is the true back-end pipeline of our 2026 architecture. You kick things off with a high-throughput streaming setup, like Apache Kafka. Those events fly through the enrichment service to grab historical context. Then, they simultaneously hit a deterministic rules engine and a machine learning scoring service. Finally, the decision engine scoops up all those signals to either pass, flag, or block the transaction. The real genius here, we are completely decoupling the core payment processing from the compliance logic. That means you are never going to delay a legitimate user's payment just because your compliance engine had a tiny hiccup. But here's the catch. The machine learning component faces a massive, massive hurdle: extreme label scarcity. In actual real-world crypto networks, only about 0.01% of data is actually labeled as anomalous. That is a tiny needle in a colossal haystack. Because of this, it is incredibly hard for standard AI models to spot sophisticated money laundering, like fund dispersal or layering, because, well, they just don't have enough bad examples to learn from.
So, the major takeaway here is that we have got to move past simple static rules. And there was a really fascinating recent breakthrough from researchers at Iowa Women's University. They highlighted a framework called Relational Domain Logic Integration, or RDLI for short. Basically, instead of just relying on that super scarce data, RDLI embeds expert-derived heuristics right into the machine learning models themselves. By injecting real human domain logic so the system understands these complex, multi-hop transactional flows, this approach actually boosted the F-score, which is a key measure of accuracy, by a staggering 28.9%. That is huge. We are literally teaching the AI to think exactly like a seasoned forensic investigator.
All right, Section 4. This is a big one. Sanctions and the travel rule.
Listen, when it comes to screening against major watch lists like OFAC, the EU, or the UN, you need to remember 3 words. Strict liability applies. Seriously, if your pipeline processes a single payment involving a sanctioned individual or entity, it literally does not matter if it was just a system glitch, a delayed Kafka stream, or a false negative in your fancy ML model. You are legally on the hook. And this is exactly why your sanction screening module has to sit as an absolute, uncompromising gatekeeper right before your final decision engine. Zero margin for error. And layered right on top of those sanctions is the FATF travel rule. This rule completely forces our system to be way more than just a passive transaction monitor. It actually dictates that identifying info about both the sender and the receiver must quite literally travel alongside the digital assets as they move between virtual asset service providers. You can't just know your own customer anymore. You actually have to facilitate the secure exchange of that identity data directly with the counterparty's exchange.
Global compliance expectations, specifically under FATF Recommendation 16, are scrutinized super heavily, with basically zero exceptions. So what does that mean for our 2026 build? It means our architecture has to generate highly verifiable, fully audit-ready rationales for every single flagged interaction. It is no longer enough to just be secure. You have to be able to continuously prove your security to international regulators at the drop of a hat.
And finally, Section 5, Dashboards and Case Management.
Get this, according to a recent global survey by PwC, 85% of organizations say compliance requirements have grown significantly more complex just over the past few years. 85%. Your human compliance officers are frankly drowning in alerts, regulatory updates, and risk scores. And that is exactly why having a unified real-time visual interface, a highly centralized dashboard, is completely non-negotiable for a modern 2026 build.
A true production-grade dashboard, kind of like the connected GRC platforms built by MetricStream, has to consolidate a truly massive amount of varied data. I'm talking about bringing together everything from live anti-money laundering alerts and overall compliance posture, all the way down to employee policy training flags and automated audit reporting. It has to provide one beautifully cohesive, color-coded view with real-time drill-down capabilities. You are basically turning a mountain of chaotic data into a streamlined, high-tech operational command center.
But here's the thing. A dashboard is only as good as the trust the human investigators actually place in it, right? It's really not enough for the system to just throw up a red flag and say, hey, this transaction is bad. It has to clearly explain the mathematical why behind that risk score. Studies actually show that providing path-level machine learning explanations significantly improves how useful experts find the tool. They absolutely need that transparent, verifiable rationale, so they can write up and file accurate suspicious activity reports without constantly second-guessing the AI.
So ask yourself, is your crypto architecture just blindly blocking transactions, or is it building a verifiable, audit-ready fortress for the future of decentralized finance? Keep that question front of mind as you evaluate or design your own systems. Today, we've journeyed all the way from raw, pseudonymous on-chain data, straight through some very advanced machine learning pipelines equipped with expert logic, all the way up to the critical human interface. Remember, mastering this technical stack isn't just about avoiding some fines. It's your absolute ultimate shield, and honestly, your greatest competitive advantage in the incredibly high-stakes world of cryptocurrency. Thanks for exploring this blueprint with me.